There was a time when Luke Rockhold stood at the very summit of the fighting world.
I go for the kill. I can be the bull and I can be the matador. I'm going to play that game.
But for every peak, there's a plunge. For every spectacular finish, a crushing fall. Rockhold's career is one of duality, a meteoric rise and a descent that was just as dramatic and unforgettable. This is not just a story about winning. It's a story about what happens after, about how confidence can be a double-edged sword. This was a roller coaster ride of talent, arrogance, legacy, and loss. The story of how one fight can change the narrative of your whole career. This is the story of Luke Rockhold. Santa Cruz, California, a coastal haven where the rhythm of the waves dictates the pace of life. It's here amidst surf and sun, Luke Rockhold's journey began. If you ever wondered where Rockhold got his athleticism from, you'd probably have to say, in part, from his dad. Stephen Frederick Rockhold, also from California, but made a name for himself as a pro baller out in Europe, playing in the highest division. Apparently the guy absolutely loved his sports and became a coach and mentor for a whole bunch of kids and in the community, which, as Luke Rockhold was growing up, became an early source of competition for him. Along with his two brothers, Nathan and Matt, and Luke got his first taste of competitive sports early and often. His mother was also super athletic and a tennis player, but it was his older brother Matt Rockhold who first started making waves as a professional surfer. Now all this came together to make Luke's early years a blend of discipline and athletic discovery.
I did judo when I was like 6 to 10, I believe. I competed. Then I started junior high school wrestling. Kind of never really had a weird style. I got kind of like written off, went to the state championships, got disqualified, and a few things that just kind of put some sour grapes in my mouth. So
his naturally tall and long frame also helped with his athletic genes and balance and skill from surfing as well as skateboarding, which was all apparently very important.
Grew up surfing and skating, and the skateboard's the one that really made me tough, taking a lot of beatings, from this thing hitting the cement.
With this lifestyle though came partying and also altercations, and he found himself in a few scraps.
He got thrown off a cliff one time and they thought he was dead. I guess he held on to the sides, got back up and went looking for the guys and beat the hell out of him. He's a dog, when it comes to street fighting.
But then Rockhold made a pretty pivotal discovery in his junior year of high school, something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and his coach, Dave Camarillo.
Came from a wrestling background. Graduated to jiu-jitsu.
It's not that surprising. While growing up in California, he'd come across BJJ. It was the place the Gracies had settled to grow their martial art in the US. Heck, the Gracies were even massively into Californian surfing culture like Rockhold as well. And here Rockhold was with already several other sports and martial arts under his belt. When he finished wrestling in high school, Luke switched completely to BJJ. It was a decision that would change the entire course of his life. Luke realized he had to pick one thing and focus on it, and at that moment in his life, Rockhold chose fighting.
I was a very good high school wrestler. I had offers to go to college. I just didn't want to wrestle in college. There was no professional outlet. I wanted to get some money. I wanted to get paid.
BJJ led him to the 2006 IBJJF Pan American Championships, where he won silver as a blue belt in the gi, and the following year competed at the World Championships, and also again won silver in purple belt no gi and blue belt in the gi. Luke Rockhold was quickly becoming one of the best up-and-coming grapplers in the world at his weight class.
I think wrestling has built a work ethic, built a discipline, and just a tenacity that not a lot of these other guys can match. I'm a go-getter, and when it all began, it was takedown, dominant position, top position wins.
All that success, though, led him right to the doors of the very famed American Kickboxing Academy.
Then I just started to fight. It wasn't enough. I wanted to kind of take it to that next level.
The next stage of Luke's life really does begin at the doors of AKA in San Jose, California. After competing in so many BJJ tournaments, especially around California, it was inevitable that he ran into some people who could get him to the next stage of his combat sports career.
Luke Rockhold comes in, I guess he's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. He wanted to spar, and I said, okay, well, you get your mouthpiece. He goes, mouthpiece? I don't have a mouthpiece. I said, well, go get a mouthpiece, and I thought he wouldn't be back. Well, we went to Target, and he came back with a mouthpiece. I went, wow.
But this was still pretty early on in the gym's development, and he'd become a staple before many other legends passed through its doors. And if you're wondering what Javier thought of a young Luke Rockhold, it might be surprising to hear, but he saw immediately in Luke world championship potential.
Oh my God, this guy's super, super talented. I said, man, he's going to be a world champion. So I knew he was going to be a world champion, hands down.
In less than a year, he made his pro debut, winning by armbar in the first round, but his second fight didn't go his way. Instead, it was more of a wake-up call.
My second fight, I was trying to do too much jiu-jitsu, and I got caught, and it really changed my mindset, changed my game, and I focused on MMA. And
Strikeforce had just entered the picture as an MMA promotion operating almost exclusively in California over the last few years, doing kickboxing. Javier Mendez had actually trained under the president, Scott Coker. Now, Strikeforce was quickly rising, and they put together a new series called Young Guns. They were looking for the sport's biggest top talent, and after just 2 pro fights, Rockhold was invited.
I'm going to trade for a little while, and I'm going to see what he's got. I don't look to the future. I don't look in the past. I'm focused right now on him.
And once in Strikeforce, he'd run through his first 4 opponents with absolute ease.
And he's got it, and it's over. And once again, it's a first-round victory for Luke Rockhold.
Every one of them ended in the first round with dominant performance after performance.
Goes to town on the side of DeBella's head, right into those lefts and right. Rockhold cinches in the rear naked choke. We have yet to see 30 seconds of action, and this one is over.
His first real challenge was against the former Tough winner, Jesse Taylor, the guy who got kicked off the show for kicking out a limousine window and getting all drunk. This guy was way more experienced than Rockhold at the time, and going into the fight, he told media it was time to get serious and start moving up in the sport. And again, Luke mauled him, showing like he was on a completely different level.
For the 4th time in a row, Luke Rockhold has won by rear naked choke.
Luke, right at this moment though, wasn't recognizable as the more brash and cocky fighter he would become known as. Videos from him at the time really show him as a humble guy, maybe the most humble guy in the training room.
Sparring with Kane, what it's like, it's quite a chore. You know, I'm just lucky to try to get out there in half a round. Cormier and Mike Kyle and, you know, and even Mayhem, different guys to mix it up, you know, and split up the rounds, because going a full round with Kane sucks.
So far, Luke had been competing in Strikeforce challenges. These were smaller shows to set up guys for the big events. And Luke was now going to get to step up against another Tough alumni who was 13-1.
Yeah, I got Paul Bradley, I guess. I don't really know too much about him. You know, I know he's infamous for getting kicked off the Ultimate Fighter show. Training with veterans like we have here at AK, it makes me, you know, builds my game knowledge, you know, my MMA knowledge here. But I think I still need some more experience in the cage till I step it up and fight, you know, bigger names and stuff like that.
Lucky for Luke, the performance against Paul Bradley absolutely blew the ceiling on what Rockhold's potential as a fighter could be, hurtling him towards his first world championship. Once again, it wasn't just his grappling on display. He was letting his left head kick fly, and it was the right hand that dropped Bradley twice.
Oh, he catches Bradley. Bradley has his hands up. Oh, and again, though, gets caught with that counter right. High head kick catches Bradley. Oh, the fight is stopped.
Rockhold walked through him like he'd walked through everyone else, despite the massive experience advantage. They didn't waste another second. He was no longer on Strikeforce challenges. They were catapulting Luke straight to a title shot against the scariest middleweight, not in the UFC, Jacare Souza. The alligator was a 9-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion who absolutely was going to test if Rockhold's grappling skills were up to par. The champion was a -600 favorite, and quite understandably. But if there's one thing that coach Javier Mendez had said when it came to Rockhold, there was one thing he never had to worry about: confidence. He said he didn't even have to think about it for 1 second. Media at the time, like Luke Thomas, acknowledged that Rockhold was talented and athletic but didn't really earn the title shot and was going against someone way more battle-tested. Luke had also just sat out for 18 months with a serious shoulder injury, and then during the training camp dislocated his finger and fractured a bone in his foot. Luke kept the pace high throughout, using his heavy kicks. He got up when he was taken down, and he started to overwhelm the champion.
And Rockhold again cornered on at the end of a round.
All 3 judges gave him the win.
You said if you're not a believer already, I'm going to make you a believer. How many believers do you think you made tonight?
Guessing quite a few. I gotta go check my Twitter, but we'll see.
This is where, for the first time, you start to see a bit of a shift in Luke's personality once he has the title.
Guys like Jacare being a lot, you know, there's a lot more, you know, assets he has than a guy like Damian Maia. I don't know why people rank people above, you know, just because they're in the UFC.
That's your humble way of saying I should be in the top 10 because you beat Jacare.
This new growing confidence coinciding with being champion is something we'll come back to as Luke talks about it later. But Rockhold was still fully aware and humble. He had things to work on.
You know, I like to be the best in the world, and I won't be happy until I am. I need to improve. I'm making mistakes, and I'm cleaning up my mistakes every fight. I'm gonna look to, you know, clean up everything and be sharper.
Luke followed up that win over Jacare with another incredibly dominant defense when he stopped Keith Jardine in the first round, before moving on to the much tougher Tim Kennedy. Now, considering the way the sport was going, it seemed like the winner would be heading to the UFC to maybe even challenge the world champion Anderson Silva. Luke told Bloody Elbow at the time that it would be a dream fight, but Tim was first.
I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna try to destroy him and put him away early.
Luke outclassed him over 5 rounds with superior striking and cardio. Once again, he defended his title. Rockhold had solidified himself as a top middleweight outside the UFC, and many believed a fight with Anderson Silva was now inevitable. But just 1 week before Rockhold's title defense, the UFC officially booked Chris Weidman to face Silva at UFC 162. Weidman would go on to become one of Luke's rivals, but at that moment it was Chris who got the call, and instead of the dream matchup with Anderson, Rockhold was handed a nightmare. A main event in Brazil against a TRT-fueled Vitor Belfort in what amounted to a #1 contender fight. Luke has since spoken about the hardball negotiations that happened around this fight, how he felt the UFC were protecting Vitor by keeping him competing in Brazil, where the drug tests were supposedly more lax, and he had to be able to take advantage of the testosterone replacement therapy. Luke later told Yahoo Sports, "If you don't sign, then they lock you into a smaller contract. They're going to F you and put you in the hardest place possible to make you fight against someone who is probably on steroids." Javier Mendez was asked about this fight and has said that probably this was the only fight where he didn't think Luke was on board. It wasn't where Luke wanted to be. In Brazil, in hostile territory, taking on the most dangerous guy in the division.
And as we've seen out of Vitor Belfort, oftentimes all it can take is one slight crack, one slight opening for his opponent to be twitching on the canvas.
It was the worst possible outcome it could have been. A devastating knockout in the first round, and all of his UFC title dreams came screeching to a halt.
I'm just going to quote you in what you said in an interview this week. "I think he's been dirty his whole career. I'm going to go out there and say, I'm going to be myself. I'm tired of holding back."
Vitor Belfort can hide in Brazil as long as he wants. If he wants to be a man, come fight me in Las Vegas. I'm sick of it. Man, just everything he does is a red flag. It's stupid. It's just it's an unfortunate situation for the sport.
There was now only one way to the title, by going through every guy in the division. He came into his next fight headlining a fight night against Costas Philippou, determined to make a statement. He controlled the distance and in just 2 minutes destroyed him with a liver kick. Rockhold was back and he wasted no time at all. He was put on the pay-per-view just 2 months later, and this time he did the same thing, absolutely ran through a staple of the division, Tim Boetsch.
Much trouble. Now he's in much more trouble because Rockhold's got it. He's ready to tap it. It's all over. It's it. Luke Rockhold.
I live to be the best, and so I believe I can achieve that. Jacare is the only guy ahead of me in these things you call rankings.
Kind of strange since you beat him, right?
It's kind of awkward. It's kind of weird. All respect to Jacare, but I'll beat him again.
Luke's next fight would be a historic moment in his career, the beginning of a rivalry that would later come to define part of his legacy, Michael Bisping. But actually, it was Luke who had been calling for that fight for a few years.
It's because the tables have turned here. You were banging on the Michael Bisping door for a long time, and now it seems like he's coming after you. And you're
the tables have turned. Yes. Oh, have they? Huh? Hey, like I said on Twitter, I'm never opposed to easy money.
Well, let's just say I'm the unofficial Strikeforce champion, and I laughed. Everybody laughed, and then I even looked at the camera. I said, "Sorry, Luke, I'm just kidding. It was a joke." This guy cannot get over it, and ever since then, he's so upset about it. Just won't shut up. Step one, boy, I'll fucking knock you out. Take one step. You ever knocked out? Your boy last weekend, you fucking prick. Call it a fucking knockout? Yeah. Look at you, you're pathetic.
It very quickly seemed that there was genuine animosity between them.
When have you ever looked at a good example? I've never been bidding on people's corners. You look at me and you look at Luke, you can clearly see that Luke needs the money. He's supposed to wear a suit here, it's a press conference. Then I get paid 4 or 5 times more than you. Perhaps I'll donate you some money, you can buy yourself a suit when I kick your ass on November 8th.
No amount of training that you do is going to save you from the beating you're about to endure.
Listen to this guy.
This fight, though, turned out to be pretty one-sided, with Luke opening a cut over Mike's good eye and smashing him apart with kicks.
The front leg. Oh, and a head kick. Bisping's down. Bisping's hurt. There's a guillotine. Takes mount position.
In the aftermath of the fight inside the cage, Luke respectfully appeared to bury the hatchet. He shook Bisping's hands and thanked him for the fight. Luke had made it look easy. It was a performance of the night win, and he was surely now inches from UFC gold. He had one more contender to fight, Lyoto Machida, a former UFC champion at light heavyweight, and it was another UFC on Fox headlining spot. And again, in the build-up, Rockhold just did not hold back.
I think I can beat him everywhere. I'm gonna lead. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna cut angles. I'm gonna be more diverse.
His confidence, again though, came across as arrogance to a lot of people. None of that mattered though, because he again completely dominated inside the octagon. With just 15 seconds left at the end of the first round, Lyoto was already battered and having the life choked out of him. And the ground and pound that followed was ruthless.
Wow! Hard elbow by Rockhold.
Luke dismantled him, finding another rear naked choke and winning another performance of the night. And Luke was pretty humble about the win, and turns out also had an awful camp with ligament damage, bronchitis, and a surfing accident.
Ball spot. Tried to okay, I'm just gonna get a little easy surf session, and then first wave, do a turn, come back, and just roll over and smack my head on the reef.
Despite all that though, it did nothing to shake his confidence going into the fight with Chris Weidman.
Can't stand with me, can't grapple with me, he's gonna have a rough night.
Meanwhile, Weidman, as the reigning and defending middleweight champion who was riding high off a big title streak that started by taking out the greatest middleweight ever, he didn't think too much of Rockhold's abilities.
It's a breaking point that he's going to feel that I'm in a different class than him.
Nothing he does worries you.
He's well-rounded, but he's not great anywhere.
His weaknesses are things that I'm better than him at, and it's pretty much every area. Wrestling department, I have him schooled in. I don't know why he gets credit for having good wrestling. He was a terrible high school wrestler. I think I could be knocking him out in the first round. I think I could take him down and look for submissions or ground and pound. There's just so many ways for me to win this fight, so I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
I'm not really concerned about prior resume. Chris is just about to find out. He's got a lot of holes in his game, and he just hasn't fought anybody that's able to exploit him until now.
Weidman's a jiu-jitsu wrestler. I got wrestling and I got jiu-jitsu, and I got something I like to call legitsu. I operate differently. When he can't find someone that's gonna mimic me, I've always done things different. He can't prepare for what I'm gonna bring. I'm gonna bring flexibility, length, power, athleticism, the movement. I will have the upper hand everywhere that fight goes. It hits the mat.
Luke certainly felt ready and legitimately did have a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Given that coming over from Strikeforce, a lot of them had been told they didn't belong at the UFC level. They hadn't even acknowledged his arrival with a title shot like some of the other champions. Basically, both of these guys hated the idea that either was on the same level as each other, and it all came to a head in the co-main event of Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. This was the biggest fight in Luke's career, on quite possibly the biggest night the UFC had ever had. The fight turned into a grueling war of attrition until a fatal error by Weidman left him compromised.
Oh, look at that. Went for a wheel kick. Rockhold takes him down. Rockhold's got his back now. Big case by Luke. He's bloodied up. Chris Weidman is a mess right now. Luke looking to win the title right here, right now. Big ground and pound on Weidman. Oh. Herb Dean all over the action. Rockhold continues to batter Weidman. He's gonna stop it. What does it take to stop a fight? Wow. That easily could have been stopped.
Chris had nothing left. Luke got back on top, and the ref just had to stop the punishment.
He's battered and bruised, and he can't see out of one of his eyes. Oh, man. This is a terrible position. This may be it. That's it. It is all over. Luke Rockhold is the new UFC middleweight champion of the world. Wow.
What a fight it had been, and what an achievement for Rockhold. He, along with many of the other Strikeforce fighters, had captured a UFC title, proving that they had always deserved respect. Both men revealed, though, that they weren't exactly 100%. Luke had been sick, and apparently Chris had had a broken foot. Although the win had been fairly dominant, Chris had also beaten Anderson twice and defended the belt several times, so it was felt an immediate rematch was warranted.
Weidman goes down in 2. I'll put him away in half the time. I almost feel bad about this next one.
And this time around, I think it's just going to be so one-sided. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to execute. I'm going to put him away real early.
But it was a rematch that we never got to see. Just 18 days out from the event, Weidman pulled out with a neck injury that required surgery, and the Luke Rockhold timeline would be changed forever.
We found out yesterday that the main event for UFC 199 on June 4th on pay-per-view had fallen through. They were going to give the title shot to Jacare, but he could not pass a medical clearance. Jacare had injured his meniscus in that fight against Vitor Belfort at UFC 198 on Saturday. Yoel Romero is suspended. He can't compete, so Michael Bisping accepted on 2.5 weeks' notice. That's your new UFC 199 main event.
Michael Bisping was writing a story of his own. He'd waited 15 years and 35 pro fights to just get a UFC title shot, and he was absolutely not going to let his chance slip through his fingers. The mind games were back on, and once again both fighters were feeling more than ready.
Luke says that he's on a different level to everybody else and that he can destroy anybody and this, that and the other. Then it turns out that he's a liar because the guy has a bit of vagina inside him because he turned down Ronaldo Jacare, whatever his name is.
Said I chose you.
Oh, okay, so you chose me. Well, you chose wrong, like I said.
Yeah.
I'm walking off a movie set, I'm gonna whoop your ass, mate, in front of the world.
Good. Fortunately, a clown like you will pay the bill.
Okay, buddy.
Hey.
So, what? You got something to say? Finish your sentence. You said, hey.
You're just an average bloke. You're just an average bloke.
Good use of English terminology.
I'm a fucking samurai. I think people have always been drawn away from confidence for some reason, that people are haters. They want to see you lose. Some people strive to achieve things and some people strive to hate. If you think something, the likelihood of it happening is very slim. If you believe in something, if you know something is going to happen, if you're confident in that situation, you will achieve things in life. That's how you overcome things. That's how you put yourself out there. You believe it and you achieve it.
Conceive, believe, achieve. Shut the fuck up. Listen.
Rockhold easily dispatched of Bisping in the first fight and had absolutely zero respect for his chances in this one. And that supreme self-assuredness may have just cost him the fight. Luke walked Bisping down and was KO'd with a shot he never even saw coming. He'd only just won the title, and it was already gone. Beaten by a man he'd already dominated, but instead perhaps finally beaten by overconfidence. To rub salt in the wound, Bisping did not cordially handle the win. In fact, his first order of business after the knockout, he jumped to the top of the cage, pointed at the unconscious Luke and said very clearly, F you. It just shows that in the second fight, the animosity between the two of them was anything but contained, and if you didn't know, the post-fight press conference looked more like a pre-fight press conference.
I am the champion of the world, people. Hate to say I told you so. Some say revenge is sweet. I disagree. I think it's better than sweet. Come on, buddy. When the shoe was on the other foot, I leaned over and thanked you at this moment in time. I said, well done.
Yeah, and I actually picked you up off the canvas. And you, being the dick you are, came up to me and was a bitch.
I shook
about
your
it.
hand, and you said, I already shook your hand and told me to fuck off, basically.
Do you know who you are? Do you know where you are, buddy?
Yeah, that's after you.
Yeah,
Hey, buddy, you got knocked the fuck out. You got knocked out, buddy. Sit down, shut up.
You got lucky.
All right. Yeah, real lucky.
Bisping.
First round, buddy.
And many fans took Bisping's side here, but I ask you, how did either man handle their win versus the other? The fans took everything Rockhold had said before the fight and used it against him. They made memes of his loss, and it was kind of devastating for Luke, but his attitude didn't really change. Moving forward in his next fights, he seemed focused solely on getting back the belt, having the thing that proved that this was all just a big mistake.
You could argue he's the best middleweight in the world. He had that rough...
How can you argue with that if Michael Bisping knocked him out?
He got caught by Bisping, right? But before that, Luke Rockhold's a motherfucker.
But again, that same belief almost cost him again in his fight with David Branch.
Tried to get everybody I could possibly think about to get a fight that really, got me up, but no one would take a fight. And now we've come down to David Branch was the only guy in the top 10 that would take a fight.
I just think he's very talented, and if Rockhold doesn't take him seriously the same way he didn't take Bisping seriously, he could get fucked up.
And there he was, 1 minute into the fight, backed up against the cage, hands down, trying to slip punches. Luke, though, was able to recover and pull off another TKO win, but his comeback tour wouldn't last. At the time, the division was shifting. GSP had won the belt from Bisping and was supposed to fight Robert Whittaker at UFC 221. He dropped the belt though, and so Rob was going to get to fight the new contender Yoel Romero. But then Rob pulled out and an interim title shot opportunity became available, and Luke Rockhold jumped right up to fight the monster Romero and again wasn't mincing words.
Yoel has more holes to expose in his game. I think Whitaker's tighter. I think he's harder to get to, whereas Yoel will kind of leave himself open. So beating Yoel will speak for itself. I think it'll speak to who the real champion is.
Some fans felt like perhaps a humbling was still in order.
Yoel wants to take that risk run forward. He could eat some just as easy. Everyone's got a button. Everyone's been touched. Everyone can get dropped. I'm a precise fighter. I fight 5 rounds. I'm not coming just to waste myself in one.
I don't think Luke realized, though, he wasn't even following his own advice. I mean, he even said this on the Embedded.
Yoel has got that air of confidence about him. He's got overconfident. The guy thinks he's invincible.
I think at the time there was a bit of a snowballing effect from fans. They'd seen Luke continue to stay supremely prideful and not be able to back it up. And you have to think of all the new fans who joined the sport in that time and didn't know anything about his Strikeforce run and had perhaps only seen the second half of his career. I think now removed from this timeline, really, Luke wasn't saying anything that crazy, but the sentiment from a lot of the fan base was that he was on a downward spiral of delusion and overconfidence.
Stay on the outside, keep him on the outside. Luke decided to go on the inside, and man, he got whacked, and then Yoel Romero broke his jaw, bro. Luke looks at me, he goes, yeah, I know, Hob, I know, but I got tired of him pushing me around.
Luke hadn't just lost, but he'd been finished again, and now there were even more doubts than ever. Yoel had been 2.5 pounds over the weight limit, but the loss put Luke out of title contention. Luke tried to book many fights after that, a rematch with Weidman, a rematch with Jacare, even a bout with Alex Gustafsson at 205, after he'd announced that cutting weight just wasn't really that healthy for him anymore. He was even talking about beating John Jones.
I'm good everywhere I go. That's similar to John. John's good everywhere he goes.
Do you see holes in his game?
Like I'm better in a lot of ways.
He instead got a veteran in Jan Blachowicz, who was looked at as a journeyman of the division.
Jan is all we could get. It's a scarce division of names and of real talent. You know, people with substance. I don't see these guys really competing. They don't have the technique. They don't have the skill. They don't have the speed. He's stiff. He's slow, and he's not technical. So that's Jan, highest ranked guy I could get.
And I mean, perhaps this was the biggest overreach of outright cockiness in his entire career.
Are you confident that come Sunday, I'll be writing a column about it's very likely that Luke Rockhold fights John Jones?
If I can't compete at the top, I won't be here.
Luke could not have been more wrong about Jan Blachowicz. He was extremely technical and wasn't slow at all. He beat Rockhold in the striking exchanges, knocked him out, and was on his own run towards being a UFC champion.
Time being spent.
Seeing Luke completely dismantled, hunched over, I mean, he just looked like a shadow of the unstoppable athletic phenom he once was. Luke told Yahoo Sports later in an interview about how much his life changed after he won the world title, how he'd taken on distractions like reality TV shows, dating Demi Lovato, and living a party lifestyle kind of caught up in his own celebrity. He admitted to developing a drinking problem through excessive partying, and after he lost to Jan, he also lost his modeling contract with Ralph Lauren because of his injuries. He felt like he'd lost sight of the goals that had made him an athlete. And the next 3 years of Luke's life after the Jan loss would be more of the same.
Yeah, I was drinking a bit much and I was enjoying myself too much. But yeah, no, it's just not helping. I got lost in this crazy world. I did have an abortion and I did have a big breakup. Wanting that, needing that, and then it all falling apart. And it hurt, It definitely was a big turning point in realizing where my life was and where I'm going. And it just fucked me up. And it made me fucking transition and really change my life for the better. So
in the fans' eyes, he'd done nothing but talk down to his opponents and get himself knocked out 3 times. People no longer cared to cheer for Rockhold. They just saw him as delusional and sometimes even arrogant. That could have been the end of the Luke Rockhold roller coaster right there. All the way up and then all the way down again. But Rockhold didn't quit just yet. After 3 years, he pulled himself back together and did something that completely changed the final chapters of his story. Out of nowhere, the UFC announced he was returning, and despite the KO losses, he was willing to take on one of the scariest guys in the division, Paulo Costa. But during that pre-fight build-up, something was different. The whole atmosphere around Rockhold had shifted. In the lead up to the fight, Luke was still pretty much saying the same things, that he was ready to beat him, to hurt him, showing just as much confidence as ever. So why this time around did the audience, instead of criticize, stand behind Luke, ready to cheer him on? We didn't know if we'd ever see him come back, and despite the years fans had spent making fun of him, they showed that they still respected him. Or at least respected the fact that he was prepared to take on an incredibly tough challenge in what could be his last fight, where he was more than likely gonna get smashed.
Yeah, I'm fighting a beast, no doubt. And I wanted that. I want a guy that scares me and gets me up in the morning. And that fuels me to fucking push myself to the end of of who I am. You're going to succeed or die trying. Otherwise, no matter what, you're learning in the process,
And in the build-up to this fight, there's plenty of examples of him saying the exact kind of cocky things he used to say. But perhaps just that willingness to acknowledge that this fight scared him enough gave fans a reason to cheer him as the underdog. Either way, it is interesting to see the inevitable cycle of the cheering underdog on the way up, the booed man on top, and then the underdog again looking to regain glory. And for me, it does call my own views as a fan into question. Have we been fair to Luke in his career? Was he really more cocky than the guy who yelled "fuck you" when he took his title? Or Weidman, knocking down his accomplishments as a Strikeforce scrub who couldn't cut it at his level? That doesn't excuse his one-sided cockiness. Of course, Luke was all about that throughout his career. But it is hard to root against the old legend who's completely unafraid to walk out there and die on his sword. And going toe-to-toe with one of the scariest guys in the division was a hell of a way to go out. The first round was very high-paced and back and forth, but 3 minutes in and Luke was already being outlanded massively.
Costa moves to mount. Oh, Luke's in real trouble.
But he kept coming forward.
Here's a good kick to the body in 2, 3, 4.
The first round ended and Luke already looked battered.
Wow, that's not good. That was hard.
But he still seemed really determined to keep fighting. He came out, guns blazing, putting it on Paulo from the start of round 2. And then it turned into an all-out war. Luke took a heavy groin shot and somehow managed to still recover. The crowd rallied him to continue. Luke, though, looked completely dead after round 2. From the untouchable fighter to the now perhaps more battered and broken than ever, Rockhold continued to try and win this fight. Luke was just swinging, man.
Twice before landing that shot.
Listen to this crowd. He's driving his blood into Rollercoaster's face.
It was clear to everyone with eyes, the man gave absolutely everything, every ounce of his soul in what he knew was his last UFC performance. In the aftermath, the MMA community rallied behind Rockhold.
I've been through so much the last few years. Thank you, fighting. Thank you, UFC. I fucking can't do this shit anymore. I gave it my all, and I just didn't. I'm fucking old.
But Luke, I'll tell you what you have. You have heart and courage like no one else. That was an amazing display of perseverance and guts and courage and the will to win.
In a sport that often only remembers the victors, Luke Rockhold's final stand reminded us that redemption isn't always about winning. And you certainly don't need a victory to leave a lasting impression in the fans' minds. Luke's career has been a roller coaster, but not just because of his wins and losses, because being a fan of Luke Rockhold was a roller coaster. He was first admired and respected as a dangerous champion from another promotion. Those early UFC finishes were just so good, some of them executed flawlessly. There weren't a lot of reasons to hate on him, especially after he proved he always belonged with the best when he won UFC gold. But as soon as the losses started happening, his confidence and really overconfidence couldn't be ignored any longer. And by continuing to talk how he had always done when he found success, he truthfully put that target on his back. Perhaps he was cocky at times, but so are so many other fighters. And it begs the question why some arrogance is rewarded in others and simply is an albatross for some that follows them their entire career. Luke Rockhold reminded us that heart, grit, and authenticity can outshine even the most devastating of losses. His story is far from a perfect one, but there is zero doubting that just as his career came to a close and the fan base finally got behind him again, he was indeed worthy of respect.
Luke Rockhold, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for a legend.
Right, so if you didn't know, now you know. There might be more to Luke Rockhold than you had originally thought, or maybe you knew all this anyway and you still be laughing at him his whole career. Either way, I think Luke Rockhold has had a pretty incredible story. I want to give a shout out to Luke Taylor. Luke, thank you very much for editing this video. Guys, go check out his new YouTube channel, all kinds of good stuff on there. Go check that out, show him some support, and say thank you to Luke. Shout out to all you guys who are channel members over here as well, guys. Thank you for the extra support. We appreciate that. If you want to join them, guys, get access to the writers meeting, early access to these essays as well. Below, hit the button, check it out, become a channel member. Let us know down in the comments as well if you enjoyed this one, guys. Who do you want me to do next? I'm always open to new ideas. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video as well, all right? And don't forget to subscribe if you're not. I've been Bailey, and I'll see you in the next one.